and welcome to this week's spoiler review of Succession here on the Outlaw Nation. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, joined as always for these reviews by this gentleman over there, my fellow geek buddy, Shannon McClung. How are you, Shannon?
Oh, Johnny, another fantastic episode. So much so that my wife and I, we met up with some folks who were not able to come to my birthday celebration last week or 2 weeks ago. So we had a little bit of a late night, but we were like, well, we gotta watch Succession. And then I needed to watch again this morning just to clarify some things.
Of course.
But yes, just another dynamite episode that is funny, hilarious, compelling, and tragic.
Yeah, all at the same time. And for those of you who don't know, or maybe not caught up in it, Succession, this season, every day is a day, which is the next day. Like every day is the next day. And this is the next day after all the news about Logan Roy's passing has filtered through to everybody and across the world. And now we're seeing people lobbying to become the next interim CEO, not the next CEO, but the interim CEO here of Waystar Royco. So a lot that went down here. We saw the kids maneuvering here. We saw the lackeys, for lack of a better term, the old guard maneuvering here. Marcia is back to wreck house. Poor Kerry being sent back to her little apartment in Manhattan. We see Greg, who was Shannon's favorite character, apparently someone to cheer for. We see him absolutely lobbying anybody with any semblance of power. And I think, is it Carl or Frank who gives him the biggest laugh ever when he tries to suggest that he should have been number 2. But this all is as if trying to maneuver and deal with the politics of becoming the next interim CEO to guide them to this sale with Matsson isn't enough. A piece of paper is found here in this episode, Shannon, which throws everything into disarray. Carl wanted Frank to essentially use it as toilet paper, but Frank had to adhere to the old man's wishes, and it caused all kinds of drama. Was that a cross out of Kendall Roy's name, or was that an underline of Kendall Roy's name? Pretty incredible stuff that we got here. So overall, Shannon, what are your thoughts on this episode? I know you just a few seconds ago gave us a little bit of overall, but like, what is your overall thoughts as we navigated everything in this episode? And we'll get into specific storylines in this review.
I mean, just the wonderful writing, the wonderful direction, the wonderful performance. Like, this is the type of show. Again, we've said this many times. Like, oh my gosh, I hate to see this show go, but at the same time, it does have a repetitive quality, and I think Jesse McCartney and his team are aware of that. And there's like, you know what? Let's go out on top, because even with Kendall talking to Stewie, and Stewie's what's in it for me, it's like we have seen this before. Like, we have seen these machinations before. So I think making the decision to end it at season 4 was the right decision, despite the fact that every week is just so much fun to watch. Watching how the lackeys, as you said, the vultures, the body's not even cold. And watching how people are circling, and Greg, despite the fact that I do love the character of cousin Greg, he's like the kid that gets brought into the cool kind of mean group at school. And starts to try to mirror their behavior, but he's not that good at it. So, I mean, just his reaction to Kerry as Stephen Root was, delivering this, this speech about Logan Roy, and Tom has a couple of funny statements. And then you hear Greg's like, Stephen Root says he molded the country like clay. And Greg's into a dick. And even Tom's like, what?
Too far.
Another just wonderful episode of this series.
He doesn't know. He knows how to be in the sandbox. He doesn't know how to play in the sandbox. The rules are so weird to him. He doesn't have a natural ability to exist in those different sandboxes that he's in. Even just his name being on that a piece of paper, instead of being like overwhelmed by that and honored by that, he's like, well, I guess this means I'm your number 2. And so he just doesn't know how to do it. But he's so desperate to have any kind of status here that he'll do anything or try to create something or glom on. He's like a barnacle. He's like a barnacle riding on the back of different whales, basically these whales of industry, so to speak. So yeah, I mean, I was so surprised at how Marcia even let him get close to her, considering what he did to Kerry as well. So, but yeah, we're gonna get into all of it here, and let's break it down. Let's start first with the main storyline here, and of course, it's the kids dealing with the political maneuvering, as I mentioned, after the death of Logan. We see that this paper, as I mentioned, was discovered. By the way, I got to bring this up. And on this paper, we see that it's an addendum, but it's undated, and it's addendum to Logan's will, which may or may not hold up to scrutiny because it was not submitted to his estate lawyer. It doesn't have any kind of official notification on it. And as we said, Carl and Frank were debating about what to do with this paper. Jerry even comes in and is like, get rid of this thing, let's push this out. Because of course that helps Jerry, because Jerry wants to run things as well, and certainly was on her way out. Roman essentially fired her at Connor's wedding, but we see that. But apparently Logan has named Kendall Roy as a successor, possibly. And let's take a look at what that looks like here, Shannon. What does this look like? Does this look like a ringing endorsement or not a ringing endorsement? I don't know. It looks like a half underlined, half scratching out. So very funny to see that be a part of this here. And then of course you mentioned Greg's name, but Roman laughs it off as Logan writing Greg's name down as to not forget who his nephew is. That's what gets rid of Greg later on. But here, Shiv tries to ally with Roman, claiming that Kendall's name was underlined or crossed out. Kendall shuts down Shiv in a pretty brutal questioning going on. Sure, shit doesn't say Shiv, which was pretty brutal. And then Roman and Kendall later essentially shove Shiv aside to assume the mantle of leadership, claiming that Shiv will have equal rights under the agreement, equal everything like this, but because they have more experience, they should be up front. Even Kendall gets a shot in at Shiv when she tries to claim that she did the work that she did there at the company. And he's like, yeah, that was daddy made work. And it was like, oh my God. So, and Kendall allies himself with Stewie and a smiling Sandy. And let's bring that up too, Shannon. I mean, this is incredible stuff. I took a picture of it and put it up on Twitter. I mean, that's when you get revenge on your life rival right there. That's the look on your face when that happens. And then we see we see earlier Kendall talking about his grief guy, which I think is hilarious. But then we hear about Hugo, who begins the episode on the phone arguing with somebody he's leaving a message for. We find out that's his estranged daughter, and his estranged daughter sold stocks of Waystar Royco just before the announcement of the death of Logan Roy. So essentially trying to make money before the stock went down. And then they have a debate about how to paint Logan Roy in order to ascend Roman and Kendall when they finally agree and lobby and get the certification of the board to be the interim COOs. And then Kendall goes there behind both Roman's back and Carolina's back and tells Hugo to craft a negative statement about Logan that uplifts Roman and Kendall, probably more Kendall than Roman, and tells Hugo, in essence, if you don't do this, I'm going to pull out the strap on, which means I'm going to fuck you over for the situation with your daughter. In the meantime, Shiv is pregnant. She walks away after everyone else is celebrating later on in the episode, tells Stewie to stop laughing. Then she stumbles down the stairs, which may affect her pregnancy, and has a scene earlier in the episode with Tom where she talks about her guilt about her father dying because she thought the kids going against her father forced him to get on that plane to go talk to Matsson, which is what led to his death. So a lot of going on with these kids here. And Roman seems to be fine with everything. He's pre-grieved. So what's your thoughts on all of this maneuvering and all these conversations happening with the kids in that piece of paper, Shannon?
I mean, just with the opening, we see how each one of them is dealing, with the day after, the next day after losing a parent. And you see Kendall sitting on the floor. He's unshaven. He's sort of, he's got his messed up hair. Shiv seems to be, bedbound. And, we saw her leave with Tom, and she is there by herself.
Yeah.
And from the state of that bed, it didn't look like anyone else had been there. So she is, shackled to her bed. And then we see Roman kind of just going about his day as he would. I mean, when he does say that he pre-grieved, I mean, that the opening does kind of support that, that he's brushing his teeth, just again, kind of going about his day. But then you watch how Kendall, as they get to the apartment, Kendall's expression as he walks in, like, this is like being behind enemy lines, almost. Like, you know, he hasn't been there in a while, and the last time he was there, like, it was contentious. And so you see all of these well-wishers, and I would be really curious. I didn't do this, but I'd be really curious to go back through IMDb and look at all of these day players and be like, how many of these people have popped up in the show in like a small appearance? Like, I would be so curious to see if, like, their casting directors, like, you know, pull out our binder of co-stars who have been at Roy events. Let's get them all.
Who's available? Book them for that day.
Yeah, because you really get that sense of everyone that had any sort of tangential connection to him is trying to get a piece of the pie right now. And even though, like, it is a private event, it is still very, very populated. The only genuine connection you really feel is with the kids. Love the fact that we see Marcia coming back, and as she's telling Kendall, like, you know, we spoke every morning, every afternoon. We had a complicated relationship, but we had intimate phone calls. And it's just like, oh my God. Well, one, there's the nature of what can be construed an intimate phone call, but it's also like, man, she hasn't been talking to him. Like, she knows that he died, and like, I got to get back and make sure that I get mine. And watching how, you know, even Kendall says that to Shiv and Roman about how, like, Marcia's back. She's talking about intimate phone calls. Like, everybody wants their piece of the pie. And then whatever transpired, and we may never find out, but whatever transpired when Shiv got into the car with Tom, when Tom shows up, you see those ice daggers from Siobhan Roy as she looks at Tom, and they exchange some eye contact. He excuses himself, and he joins Carl and Frank and Jerry. The moment that they talk about that piece of paper, the expression on Jeremy Strong's face. Now, a lot has been spoken about his acting method, his process, and how it doesn't always work with his co-stars. And but it's such a tug of war because you can't deny the results.
I think it's all frivolous talk, in my opinion, because the results are fantastic. As long as Sarah Snook is like, he isn't sending me a dead bird like Jared Leto did, or a dead rat, whatever he sent, or dead bat, whatever it is, like, then I'm fine. Whatever takes the process. She's not one of those actresses. You know, they say that the creators say that all the time, that Sarah just turns it on and turns it off. It's no big deal to her. But Jeremy has to go home with this shit. And KIERAN too. KIERAN says, like, it's tough to navigate and go into those feelings and then just let him go at the end of the day. So,
well, and like, he even had, like, in several interviews, he had a very Roman Roy response, like, oh my God. Like, you get the sense of, like, oh, here Jeremy goes again with his thing. You know, the most sort of, bloated responses from Brian Cox, who is also not known to be an easy guy to work with. You have these two artists who are very much stuck in the way they want to do things. And when they kind of step on each other's toes, like, it can make for a challenging work environment. But just seeing this weird sense of euphoria and relief and regret, because, you know, the kids, had he not died, the kids were going to do their own thing. They had finally broken ground. Like, they had formed a bond that they hadn't had in a long time. And Logan's death has turned everything upside down. So the whole moment, as they're talking about that piece of paper, and Shiv is the first one to throw it out, like, is this an underlined, or is this a name that's crossed out? And she's trying to play both sides. Like, oh, I don't care either way. Like, I'm just pointing out a fact here. And Roman, because he did have recently he had the inside track with Logan. So he's just like, I don't think that means what you think it means. You know, talking with friends who have had parents pass away, like having no parents left, and the will comes up, and you see, like, siblings and cousins and family, watching how that can really sort of devolve into this battle of who gets what. Like, it's a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing to see. And like with this, it's not just the family. It's this multi-billion-dollar deal, and so many people's futures are riding. Like, it is the most high pressure environment. But the moment that Shiv, Kendall, and Roman kind of sidebar, like, all right, let's figure this out. And Roman is not willing to say, okay. He's just like, no, I didn't necessarily divulge all of this, but I talked to Dad a lot. The moment that Roman sees an opportunity, when Kendall's like, okay, me and Roman.
Yes.
Because Shiv, the whole strategic breakdown or whatever, the daddy make work. They're just like, look, you don't have experience. It's going to be the three of us. This is an interim position. Roman right away is just like, yep, there's my lifeline.
Yeah. And
watching how Shiv reacts at the end. I mean, one, the audience, we're the only ones who know that she's pregnant.
Yes.
And you watch that fall. Yeah. It was just so well done. And the moment that Kendall goes to Hugo and it's like, yeah, the bad dad stuff, let's do that. And Hugo poor Hugo, he's just getting it from every side. And he's just like, can we get their sign off? He's like, nope, this has to be you, no Prince, or I gotta take out the strap. And like, these characters, like, we want the best for them, especially this season. We've grown to like really love their bond. But you see, it seems like it's just going to be war on the horizon.
Yeah, and it seems like Kendall is pretty much following the Logan Roy textbook. And this, I bring this up because it's ironic that he is going to become the guy that his father wanted him to become after his father died. And that does happen. I will say this from my own personal experience. I am not the same person I was after before my father died as I am now. And it was his death that kind of grew me up and matured me and focused me and got me going in a different direction. So it's ironic in this more evil way, obviously, because I feel like, it was positive. I used the death of my father in a positive way. It seems like Logan is using the death of Kendall's using the death of his father to become his father in essence and do these underhand things. These are things that Logan would do. The things that Kendall does in this episode is exactly what Logan would do. Roman tries to kind of be like Logan, but Roman, we've found out, actually is a more sensitive soul, a more caring soul. And so he doesn't have that strength to necessarily push his candidacy through. Shiv is still caught up and distracted by a multiple number of things. And look, the boy children are not wrong that she has little to no experience running a company. So to just hand her this interim CEO position is absolutely insane. And Roman has a stronger leg to say, look, I have a stronger connection with Matsson. If we're just doing this for the deal, I should be the guy. And so I have a feeling what Kendall's doing throughout this episode, slowly but surely, yelling at them to listen to him when he wants to have this conversation, snapping at Shiv, bringing Roman along to essentially be his second in command here, and using Hugo in this way and then denigrating his father. This is all going to be ugly tactics, but sadly in this world of succession, it may be why he stands atop the mountain at the end. But we've also seen Kendall fall apart. We've also seen Kendall not being able to handle it. Even Frank says to him, dude, you sure you want to do this again? Are you sure you want to open this can of doors? You barely put yourself, or can of worms, you barely put yourself back together. Don't you want to go do stuff with your brother and your sister? And so he tries to counsel him and in a way, and Kendall won't listen. He wants that brass ring, even like you said, negotiating with Stewie, having Sandy be there, and Sandy's daughter, Hope Davis, plays. He is aligning everything for his own benefit. So it'll be real interesting how this causes fractures in their relationships. And what you brought up earlier about the will, you're 100% right. I mean, my mom has made a living will where we each get 33 1/3%. That's how it works. And because we want to avoid situations just like this, obviously we don't have the Roy's wealth, but any little thing you want to be able to avoid the drama, because you're right. That is what happens. And we're seeing that happen here. And let's throw the Marcia bomb in the middle of it as well, which is really going to be interesting. I want to move on to Marcia. Is there anything more you want to add to this with the kids, Shannon?
Well, it was interesting because Kendall's reaction to being ignored,
Yeah.
to me, that was perfectly justified. Like, he is just kind of like,
His
guys,
anger?
yeah, that when he's like, will you stop fucking ignoring me?
Right.
That made total sense to me. It's like, guys, here are the cards we have been dealt. We need to figure this out. It's only towards the end, after he gets Roman on his side, that I feel like we start to see those Logan Roy machinations.
Yes, good point. Yeah, well, because he needed that foundation with which to do the Logan Roy stuff for sure. And look, a lot of people who've studied the Beatles, Paul McCartney says at the end, he was the one that was having to yell at John and Ringo and George just to get them in the studio to do these albums that we love so well near the end of the run of the Beatles. So sometimes you have to be the bad guy and use certain tactics in order to get the results. Now, I don't think he did any Logan Roy stuff after that, but just getting people into the room can be difficult. Let's move on to Marcia here. Shannon, this is, as I said, she is the bomb that comes in here. Everyone is surprised to see her on the kids' side of things. She had been gone on a shopping trip, an endless shopping trip in Milan. And when she's here, she, as you said, talks to Kendall and tells him about these intimate late night conversations that in no fucking way ever happened. And she then, when she sees Connor and Willa, who shows up, first she tries to snark Willa, and Willa shuts that shit down real quick. That shows you how far Willa has come by, because she's like, look how far you've come. And she's like, look how far both of us come, bitch. And so it's a good back and forth there between them. But then she sells the building to Connor for $63 million on a spin handshake. So I don't even know if she has the right to sell the building, but she's already making maneuvers and filling her bank account in this situation. And then, man, she embarrasses Kerry. It says that, she told Kerry not to show up. Kerry shows up. She's in tears. She wants to get her stuff upstairs. And this mirrors what we saw, I think, in the first season when Marcia wouldn't let the kids upstairs to see Logan when he was recovering from his stuff. Now she won't let Kerry go upstairs, and has all her stuff in a bag all ready to go. And Kerry drops it all on the ground, which is super embarrassing, while she lobbies Roman in her defense, saying that Logan was telling us we were going to get married. Logan's all this kind of stuff. So, and then she sends her out to her tiny little apartment, in Manhattan. This is fascinating to bring Marcia back in, and be a part of this. So she could end up being a very formidable foe for these kids when it comes down to the parsing out of Logan's will and empire. What do you think about that?
Marcia's a great character. Marcia's a pit bull. I mean, you get in between her and her goal, and she comes after you. And because, we knew she and Logan were on the outs.
Yeah.
I didn't expect we would see her again. And like the great thing with a show like Succession is they don't necessarily feel, I think with the exception of season 3 with Adrian Brody and Alexander Skarsgård, it's not this season, like people just kind of show up. When Fisher Stevens showed up, and granted, it's not like everybody knows who Fisher Stevens is, but like, folks like us from the 80s, like, hey, Fisher Stevens. Like the fact that it wasn't like, I think her name is Hiam Abbas. It's it wasn't like, hey, tune in for Hiam Abbas's, glorious return. It's like it was a total surprise to see her pop up. And it is the same Marcia who you're trying to figure out, are you being sincere, or is this all an act right now? And that's what you get as she's saying. The first thing she says is, for your, condolences to Kendall, and watching the way she kind of maneuvers. I mean, Connor is sort of presuming she's the one who would get the house. I mean, she is the spouse, estranged, but she still is the spouse. I mean, and that was something my wife and I were talking about. She was just like, where's the will? Where's the will? And I'm like, well, in terms of the company, like that's a personal asset versus a business asset. Like those are to my knowledge. And again, I'm a business idiot. I'm like, I think those two are separate. But the way that she, when she says, yes, 60 to 70 million, and Connor's 63, and see, the old school spit handshake deal. The most tragic part is when Kerry comes in. And granted, Kerry is the mistress. She's
glorified
the other
arm
woman.
candy. let's be real. She's glorified arm candy who thought her status being next to Logan Roy gave her extra, power. And now she's been reduced to this, as Greg said, this person turning on the waterworks. So,
oh my gosh. When she shows up, Greg recognizing like, all right, this person has no more power. This person who was kind of shitty to me, who threatened to tear me apart like human string cheese. He's like, I'm going in for the kill. And even then, even in being in that alpha position, he still screws it up.
Yeah.
Oh boy, here come the waterworks.
Greg,
the moment that Kerry walks in and like, I feel like we got a genuine Greg reaction. Oh no. But Marcia, as you said, like the kids with season 1, she was like, no, you can't go upstairs. Your stuff is in a bag. And watching how she drops it, and the one who comes to her rescue is Roman. And like, I had to turn on the subtitles this morning. So I'm like, she's stammering something. I can't hear what it is. So I turned it on, and that's when she did say, like, we were talking about getting married. Like he put something in a note. It was going to go to his lawyer. You just, for someone who was kind of such an asshole, you do feel bad for her. Like, oh my gosh, your plan that you had has just been yanked out from under you, and you may not have a ton of options right now. Yeah. And when Roman is the one who says to Marcia, like, that was a little much, and Marcia's, we got her a cab to the subway, not a cab to her apartment, a cab we're not going to pay for you. We're not going to pay to drive you all the way there. We'll pay you to get you to the train. Then you can take out your Metro card and take it the rest of the way.
It's because Marcia said, Shannon, like, I told her not to come here. So I'm only going to take her to the subway. Yeah.
So cutthroat.
Yeah, man. Super savage for sure. But like you said, Kerry was living off, and look, let's not like try to paint Kerry as a good person. She finagled her way into sleeping with Logan Roy because she wanted access to that power. Let's not get it twisted. She knows what she did, and so she was a huge mouse, and then all of a sudden the cheese died, and now she's a small little mouse, and she's going to get crushed by these titans, and Marcia will eat her for fucking breakfast. She will use Kerry as a toothpick. So I'm very curious to see if this is the end of Kerry for now, or if she's going to try to glom onto Roman and then use Roman to kind of finagle her way back into the situation, which I wouldn't doubt, because a lot of people have felt like Roman is the actual successor to Logan Roy as a person, whereas Kendall is the successor of Logan Roy as a business person. And so that's going to be really curious to see how that plays out between those two. I want to go on, but I want to take a quick break just for the podcast when I put this up, and we'll be right back. I'm just going to put this up. We're back right after this. Mull this over. That's good. All right, let's deal with the lackeys. Carl, Jerry, Frank, and Tom with Carolina in tow. Shannon, let's go and take a look at the China. Their discussion. It's so good. Their discussion about who should lead, with Carl pitching himself as the COO, so he should be next in line. Jerry,
CFO. He's the CFO.
So he should be the next in line. Jerry denigrating him by saying, yeah, everyone respects what you did for cable in the 90s, but Carl, but we're dealing with something else. And she's ignoring that she was about to be fired, conveniently so. And she even uses the DOJ situation, which she had alluded to in the last episode, how she danced them through a thunderstorm without getting wet, as her claimant. Even when the kids have come to the conclusion that's Roman and Kendall, she tries one last time to stop them from going in that route and making herself the interim CEO, and they shut that shit down real quick. But then Tom, who is there eating a fish taco or whatever that is, tries to throw his hat in the ring, and Carl absolutely denigrates him, man. It just tears him to pieces by saying, like, you were just a hanger on, and you backed the wrong horse. And as Shiv says, you backed the dead horse. And people are just going to bring this up and bring you up as you're just a clumsy, awkward loser. And you're married to the boss's daughter, who doesn't even like you anymore. So just like destruction. Tom almost seems like, damn, Tom almost seems like hurt, like legitimately hurt by all of this situation. So, but of course they try to get there. They have the conversation about getting rid of the paper, but in the end, Frank does not get rid of the paper. He keeps it. And that's what leads to this conversation and all of this stuff. So what are your thoughts on their political maneuvering? Who are we seeing the end of in this situation? In the Kendall Roman administration, do we anticipate any of these four will still be there other than maybe Frank?
Frank, and Carolina. That's who I think would survive the culling that is about to come down. But watching their dynamic, it reminds me of the first season of Rome, when you've got all of the the Senate with Caesar and talking about like one day we're enemies, the next day we're friends. The way that Carl says to Tom, like, sure, you can throw your hat in the ring. As a friend, this is what people are going to say. You're a clumsy interloper who X, Y, and Z. I mean, just so awesome. Like when it's funny how the kids have such a poor view of that, the upper management, because from my standpoint, and again, we're only showed what we're supposed to, what the storytellers want us to see as an audience. But to me, it's like, Frank seems like he's really good at his job. Yeah. Jerry seems good at her job. Carolina, like, we don't know what Carl does. But as they're having that discussion of like, okay, who's a good vote for interim CEO? And Carolina, who's always so kind of cool, level-headed, could even maybe be like, she could slightly be on the spectrum. I mean, just because she's just all facts. Yeah. Saying, hey, Jerry, Jerry did this before. And Frank's kind of like, well, sure. But, the CFO, that seems a natural transition. David Rash, the way he acts without any dialogue, his just sort of, hey, the way he is processing, we're watching him process information real time, is just so funny. And his thing to Jerry about like, hey, look, you had your at bat, why don't and she's like, yeah, why don't I do it again, because I did it well the first time. And Tom's whole thing, Matthew Macfadyen, like, we forget that how big Matthew Macfadyen is because he's usually next to Greg, to Nicholas Braun, who's a giant. But Matthew Macfadyen, he does look just kind of like this clumsy oaf next to the rest of these folks, because he's a pretty big guy. But his like, I'm happy to serve. If there's a ring, I'd like to throw my hat in it. Of course, I'm sad. And Jerry, what a great line of dialogue. Like, watch out for your fish taco. You're getting your melancholy everywhere. just so much fun dialogue. And then when the kids are brought in and Roman is the one, I forget, I think maybe it was Carl who said it first, that, Logan was souring on Jerry. And then Roman says the same thing in a completely different environment. And Jerry's awesome legal response, there's no paper trail. There's no evidence of that on paper. And then watching Roman, and I don't know if that's a reference to the dick pics, but Roman's like, do you want to go? Do you want to go here? Like, that's the first time we've seen him sort of legitimately step up to Jerry, and she immediately rescinds. With Tom, knowing that, like, all right, I'm on the chopping block, and I'm trying to, like, all right, maybe I can position myself as a leader. No, maybe I can position myself as someone's confidant, as someone's number two. As he's saying that to Kendall, and Kendall's like, I like you, Tom. Good luck. Oh my God. I mean, even within that group, it's like, there's only so much I can do for you, dude. And there's other things I have to serve for first before protecting you. I mean, just so well done. And I mean, I loved her golden, like, let's strap you into that golden parachute. Like, that was just, all of the dialogue in this show is just so well written.
Yeah, I mean, Carl wants to get out. He said, I want my piece. I want my piece. If I'm not going to get the CEO, I want my piece before I leave. And that's fair. Because Carl, as Jerry said, he probably was a big deal in the 90s with that cable stuff, and then couldn't kind of repeat that. And so he took a job here underneath someone else who was consistently successful at destroying things, because maybe Carl doesn't have that killer instinct as strongly as Logan did. So he's like, fuck it, I'm going to serve the king here and make
Just
some
riding
money
the
on side.
wave.
Yeah, riding
Just
the wave.
trying to ride the wave.
Exactly. And I'll swallow my pride until I get my piece. So here's my piece, let me get it. But you're right. And let's move on to Tom here. As we spoke about here, and he gets absolutely destroyed in this meeting for sure. And then, as you alluded to with the Kendall stuff, there's a later scene where he tries to kiss Kendall, and Kendall absolutely disrobes him completely and verbally, and just says, "Oh, here comes Tom to kiss my ass." And
Roman.
Oh, sorry, Roman. Right. Here comes Tom here to butter me up and kiss my butt, and just absolutely eviscerates poor Tom. So Tom's ability to ride from one beating to another and stay upright is pretty amazing in this situation, because he's not even done getting beat up in the episode. Then he tries to talk to Shiv, and while Shiv is surrendering about the emotional stuff about feeling guilty, he tries to have a conversation with her, and then tries to kind of finagle his way in with her by talking about her silk blouses and talking about this stuff and France and all of this. And he's like, it was only a little bit ago. And she goes, nah, it was a while ago, son. And then walks right off past him. So Tom is left with Greg, and even Greg he finds discomfort in, because Greg, can't do, like when they're having the speech there from Ron Petkus, Tom is dropping in these little bombs about Logan, about how Carl has never taken a decent shit in 20 years because he's eaten Wonder Bread and steak frites his whole life recently. So that he's the one that clogged up the toilet, and that Logan was fishing for his phone in the toilet. All of that is there. So Tom, for all his, I don't know where Tom goes from here. I don't know what his options are, but he was destroyed in this episode. He went from one beating to another throughout this episode. Where are we going to end up with Tom, man?
Well, it's funny that he did go to Roman and was trying to, find an ally.
Yeah.
I do think Tom may have loaded a bullet into the gun for Roman, because the whole idea of Logan only wanted one person to take over.
Right.
He asked you back.
Right.
My feeling, and again, I might be wrong, is like Roman hadn't considered the fact that I'm COO. I was on the outs with that as well. We were mending the fences. I am still the COO. I am in the line. I am in the legitimate line of succession here. Yeah. I feel like Roman probably didn't actually consider that until Tom told him.
Right.
And because Roman doesn't necessarily like Tom, he's just like, well, I just got the milk. I'm not buying the cow. So as far as where Tom goes, when Shiv fell and Tom races over there, I do think at his heart, I think Tom is not a bad man. Right. I think he's fighting for his life right now and might be getting a little desperate, but I don't think he's a bad man. And the fact that the way that Carl refers to him as a clumsy interloper, and he's talking about that trip to France and how he put his arm around Shiv, being like, do you like that? Do you like that? I did get an uncomfortable window into the way he would be with women.
Yeah.
And I'm like, maybe you're not trying to come off as creepy, but this is so uncomfortable. This amount of, because he's got those big eyes, this kind of, unblinking eye contact, asking someone if they like something. I'm like,
yeah. That's probably why Roman's ex-girl spit his secretions back into his mouth at the bachelor party night, man. I would imagine, because Tom is the kind of guy that would happen to. Is this okay if I spit this back in your mouth? Oh, sure. Exactly. Yeah, good point. I know we got to wrap up, Shannon. I want to get your thoughts on two last quick things about this. What do we think about the Ron Petkus speech? And Marcia is the one who gets people to come into the room to hear Ron. Do you think she is, in essence, aligning herself with this power conglomerate, this power group, who are trying to turn, as Connor said, trying to turn Logan into a neoconservative when he was anything? I think he says he's paleo-libertarian, whatever the fuck that means. And he's trying. So do you think this is Marcia, in essence, building an army to go against the kids should they question anything about her rights in the will, any of the financial rights or anything like this? What do you think about that?
She was the one who, when they saw the dogs come in, the sniffing, and saying that they're like, what is this? And they're like, well, you know, Minkin's going to stop by.
Right.
And, you know, yeah, I mean, the fact that according to them, like he might be elected president in the next week, she wants to be on his good side because when it comes down to a legal matter, a will matter, having the president of the United States on your side is probably, you know, that's a good ally. So I hadn't really considered it at first. I thought she's just like, let me get my 63 million for this apartment that I'm never going to see again. Let me get all this stuff and let me go back to Europe. Let me go back to let me go home. But now, as you're saying it, it's like, yeah, maybe she is angling for not just the biggest piece of the pie. Maybe she's angling for the pie.
Yeah, that's what I think. And so the deal with the Matsons is going to go down. How's that going to go down? And what's the piece of the money that she will probably be entitled to because she's still married to Roman? That would be something that I think is going to be very interesting.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, similar to Logan. All these fucking names. It's going to be.
I know it's a lot of 2-syllable names.
It is, right? I'm glad you sensed that because it drives me insane trying to keep on track here. But yeah, all of this stuff is fascinating. Also, speaking of the deal, real quick, Shannon, what's your thought of Oskär? Matson's right-hand man on the phone here, who sounds like something out of the Big Lebowski. What do you think of this guy? What's his role in all of this?
I thought that was such an awesome scene that when Kendall jumps in like, hey man, look, this isn't a power play. We're all trying to get on the same page. Like, yeah, it totally makes sense. And then when Shiv jumps in and says, you know what happened here yesterday? Like, oh yeah, we're all so torn up about it. A meeting in the US. Well, it's the annual retreat. Like, we can't just up and leave it. Like, I don't remember if we met him in season 3. I can't remember.
I don't know if we've met him. Yeah, good question.
I sure hope we meet him in the next episode because I couldn't tell. I'm like, I don't know if this is a Swedish accent. It almost has like a tinge of Australian to it. But very, very funny. Like it is the behavior of someone who is holding all the cards.
Yeah. And he's like, yeah, that was a tough one. That was a tough one. What does that mean? That was a tough one. So yeah. And the actor is Johannes Haukur Johannesson. So he's from Iceland. That's the actor who voiced it over. And you guys maybe have seen him in Valhalla. That's the series he was in. And yes, apparently we've seen him in episodes here. He's going to be in season 4. He's listed to be in the next episode, the 7th episode, the 9th episode. So awesome. An interesting character that we're going to get to know intimately as the series goes on this season. So yeah, going to be very fascinating. All right. Any final words here as we walk out of Honeymoon States, Shannon, for this episode?
I mean, I did like that the last 3 episodes have been, or the episode titles have been Connor-centric.
Yes.
That we had rehearsal, Connor's wedding, and now Honeymoon States, talking about where they're going the following week, probably on some sort of, presidential tour. Yeah. But how they're Connor related, but ultimately he's not that effective in the story. But no, I mean, if you're watching the show, you're watching this. Just enjoy these last 5-6 episodes that we have before Succession rides off into the sunset, because the show is just, again, it's very easy to get lost in the wake of a show, because I remember watching Watchmen and being like, I think this is the best thing HBO has ever done. Then we're watching this might be the best thing HBO has ever done. Succession season 4. No. I think this is the best thing HBO has ever done. But no, for the real this time, I think it's the best thing HBO has ever done.
There you go. And shout out to Lucy Preble, who wrote this episode. She's also a producer on the show. But the director of this episode, LORENE SCAFARIA, who did Hustlers. So pretty incredible to see her directing this episode. So shout out to her, because I thought this was a damn good follow-up episode to what is going to be an iconic episode, the episode last week. So great to see you bringing in some big guns like LORENE SCAFARIA to come in and bring her point of view in all of this, which I thought was essential to delivering a fantastic episode for sure. Well, what did y'all think of this episode? Let us know down in the comment section below. What did we miss? What did we not miss? What did you want to talk about? What do you think is going to happen here with everybody that we've spoken about here and all of this? Where do you see this all ending? Is Kendall going to self-combust? What is going to happen with all of this? Is Roman going to be standing atop the pile? God help us, is Greg going to be sitting there there atop the pile when this season is over. Let us know down in with Marcia, married to Marcia. Let us know down in the comment section below. And remember to hit a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. That would be so important. Shannon, another fun show. Tell people where they can find you, brother.
I mean, one, I had not considered Greg and Marcia hooking up, but I really hope that happens.
Marcia. I mean, come on.
And I also think I called Jesse Armstrong Jesse McCarthy earlier. So if I did do that, apologies, audience. Yes, but you can follow me on social media on Twitter at Shannon _McClung, on Instagram at Shannon the Geek Buddy. You can see me twice a week with this gentleman to my right, along with Mr. Vogel on the Geek Buddies, where when we get to this section of the show, I do say follow us at Geek_Buddies. But we're doing our main show and our review of the Mandalorian. The finale is coming up this week.
Yeah, we got to figure that out. Mikey, once again, going out of town, so we got to figure that out to do it maybe either live or pre-taped. We shall see. But yeah, you can follow me at The Rocha Says on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, The Outlaw Nation on Twitch. And as I said, please subscribe and hit that bell button. We're going to be reviewing this every episode of this season all the way through to the end. So thanks to all of you who've been coming aboard to watch these, especially last week, which we had the most views of any review we've done yet on the Succession. So thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it madly, and we'll talk to you next time with another brand new review of Succession here on the Outlaw Nation. Peace.